UPod Street is an official affiliate of Birdland Sports. Visit birdlandsports.com/UPodStreet, and 10% of your order will go directly to supporting the pod. Use code UPodStreet at checkout, and you'll get 10% taken off your order. Now sit back, relax, and keep that beer cold, because it's on to UPod Street. What is up, Birdland? Welcome to UPod Street. I am your co-host, Jimmy Horn, and joining me, as always, is the brunette Thor himself, Jack Bain. Oh, look at that. The Thor water bottle.
I was prepped today.
You're leaning into the nickname that I bestowed upon you and hasn't caught on at all from anyone else, and I love it.
Hey, man, I gotta, something to make you feel good.
Hey, I mean it with the most sincerity of compliments.
What are we talking about today, Jim?
We got a lot of stuff to talk about, so much so that right before the show started, you and I cut out a big chunk because we just don't have the time to go through everything that's going on. It's tough playing a little catch up here. It's nice having a break in the off season because I feel like it gives us a chance to relax. Yeah. But then we're kind of playing a catch up here a good bit for the start of the season. But today's our AL East preview, Jack. So we're gonna go through team by team in the AL East. The teams that the Orioles are in the most competition with, that we see the most, that we hate the most, perhaps Yankees. And kind of go through what moves each team has made this offseason. What do their projected rosters look like? And what are our impressions on that? How do we feel going in as defending division champions about defending our title?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Jack?
So for a lot of these projections, we're going to be using the Fangraphs program that projects kind of what their starting lineups will be. What the algorithm predicts the starting lineups to be, as well as bench and starting rotations, including the bullpen as well. So we'll just go right through it. We're going to get started here with the Boston Red Sox. Finished in the cellar last year. There's a lot of young guys on this team, but they were just kind of a flat team last year. They showed some signs of, or some flashes rather, of some bright things for the future. But obviously they came in last in the toughest division in baseball. Over the course of the offseason, they made a few additions. They signed Lucas Giolito. Lucas Giolito kind of was a big name last year. One of the more marquee, unquote, pitchers at the trade deadline. And then he stunk. He stunk real bad. But the Red Sox signed him. Kind of needed an arm after trading away Chris Sale to the Atlanta Braves, which I think they got a really good return on that trade. However, Vaughn Grissom.
I'm more surprised anyone wanted Chris Sale. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he had an okay resurgence last year, but he hasn't been the same Chris Sale of 5 years ago. Yeah,
I think the Braves are really counting on him to be healthy this year. That's been his bugaboo for the last couple years. But I mean, there's still, mid-90s fastball with a wipeout slider in that arm. So hopefully the Braves will be able to unlock somebody. Because Chris Sale, he's prime, me growing up starting pitcher. Just thinking about him on the White Sox and cutting up his jersey is one of the memories I have of him. And
the core memory right there.
Yeah, that two-headed monster of him and Rodon on the White Sox, just back to back, was really fun to watch. When the White Sox were not a dumpster fire. So that trade brought back Vaughn Grissom, which is projected to be their starting second baseman. He's a 23-year-old, kind of been a prospect in that Braves system for a long time. But there was just nowhere for him to play on the Braves, being blocked by Albies, and that, just juggernaut lineup that they have. But just going around the diamond, behind the plate, they're going to have Connor Wong, which is fine for a rebuilding team. Not really what you want, but that's what they got. Weiler Abreu, they got in a trade from the Astros in 2022. He's going to be their starting right fielder. I didn't go around the diamond at all. But in center field, Jarren Duran had a really good breakout year last year. And he's also jacked, which is pretty cool for the Red Sox. In left field, Tyler O'Neill. He was just acquired from the Cardinals in a trade. I kind of like Tyler O'Neill. He's a little bit older now. Like the prospect shine is kind of worn off of him, but he still has some left in the tank for sure. And then first base, Tristan Casas. I don't really need to say much more about him. Big left-handed power bat. Was a contender for Rookie of the Year down the stretch last year. He's going to be a staple in Boston for years to come. Second base, Vaughn Grissom. Like I said, got a lot of potential. Just got to prove it. Shortstop, Trevor Story. Trevor Story is a weird one. Hurt pretty much his whole tenure in Boston. Trying to see if he can hit outside of Coors Field. But still got a lot to prove in Boston. And then, of course, Rafael Devers at third base. Needs no introduction. And then at DH, Masataka Yoshida, who had a crazy breakout year last year after coming over from Japan. I think he's going to have another good year for sure. He was also a contender for Rookie of the Year. And then on the bench, Reese McGuire, Emmanuel Valdez, Bobby Dahlback, Rob Refsnyder. Just, platoon guys. Then they're starting five on the rotation side of things. Lucas Giolito is their ace.
There you go. He's their ace.
He's their ace.
Not much more to say there.
Followed by Nick Pivetta. He's been a long time Red Sox since 2020, so not really that long. Brian Bayo, I think, is probably the most intriguing name on this starting five. Brian Bayo was a rookie last year. Only has 1 full year of service time in the major leagues. He showed some flashes last year to be a really, really good mid-rotation guy. Kind of was lowballed on the prospect rankings when he was coming up, but I think he's finally coming out to be a solid 4 or 5 starter. Obviously, he's technically projected to be the 3 on the Red Sox, but honestly, I think he's better than Pivetta and Giolito. So, got some potential there, followed by Cutter Crawford and Tanner Houck. Fine. That's fine. And then bullpen, a lot of different names in there, but their closer is Kenley Jansen. Still had a really good year last year. Projected to kind of degrade a little bit. But what are your first impressions of this Red Sox lineup?
I mean, it's fine. It's weird. Because a core, you were just talking about core memories for you, and like core memories for me, like early on growing up, is it was always the Yankees and the Red Sox battling for the division, and I remember the Red Sox breaking the curse, and then they were winning the World Series every other year, and all this stuff. I don't look at this lineup and I'm not afraid, like, at all. Like, they have some flashes of talent, like Yoshida for me is like the guy that I look at that team and I'm like, oh, that guy's good.
What about Devers?
Devers is fine. Devers good. Fine. Yeah. Okay, he's good. But I mean, like, it's
superstar.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. He is a superstar. But Yoshida is definitely for me like the guy when I think of like who are you afraid of on the Red Sox? I think of Yoshida. I look at, and granted, like I don't follow the Red Sox super hard because I spend most of my energy following the Orioles.
Sure.
But I don't look at the Red Sox in the past like couple years and I don't see like a plan, right? Like I don't see like a unified, like this is the trajectory that we're going. This is our strategy for what sort of players we target. And these are the types of players we're trying to develop. Like I just don't see a plan. And it seems like every year they're kind of playing catch up of like, oh, how can we still be like just competitive enough? Right.
Yeah.
So they're not like the Orioles were when we were rebuilding, where like okay, they're tanking. Like this is barely a major league team.
Yeah.
Probably should be a AAA team. Like they're not doing that. It almost to me feels like an early 2000s Orioles team where it's like, sure, we'll plug this guy in. Maybe that'll work. Who knows? And so like I think personally, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, Red Sox are probably looking at a third straight year bottom of the AL East. And
Yeah, and I
that's, middle of the pack for the rest of the Major League Baseball divisions for the most part. But for the AL East, I mean, it's not good enough to compete in the division.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. I do think that the Red Sox are going to end up in the basement again. But as far as like their plan goes, they have a pretty loaded farm system. Like their top 5 names: Marcelo Meyer, Miguel Bleis, Ceddanne Rafaela, Nick York, Roman Anthony. Like those 5 names alone are going to be a killer core 5 once they get up. The issue is that they're all a good 2 years out, 2-3 years out. So being in a big market like the Red Sox are, they're going to try and put some names out there that's going to keep people coming to the ballpark, keep making that money, so that they can keep funneling that money into Liverpool. But that is a different conversation. But like they lost names like Adam Duvall, Justin Turner, James Paxton. Like those were those were guys on the Red, and Verdugo too. They lost Verdugo. Like that was their core last year. And that's what kind of gave them like a little bit of flair. Like whenever we played the Red Sox last year, it wasn't like they were just going to roll over, right? Like you were going to get some sort of fight from them. And I think the Orioles saw that. Obviously they handled business as they should have, but there were some good games in there. But ultimately, Red Sox are going to have a decent year anywhere else in the league. But we'll ultimately probably end up in the basement of the AL East.
I am curious. Like I remember like last year, before the start of spring training, they did their little like fan fest type thing.
Yeah.
Rip in peace, Orioles fan fest. But there was a whole thing with their GM and the fans were asking, and like the fans were pissed. I mean, like it's Boston. Like there's not a lot of patience in Boston. And it's gonna be really curious for me, like what you just laid out there, where if in 2 years the Red Sox are really, really good, like what the fan reaction. I mean, obviously they're gonna be happy if they're good again, but
yeah,
I've just always pictured the Red Sox as this much bigger spender team, not quite on level with the Yankees, but not far off from the Yankees.
Yeah.
It's weird to me that they are being this patient with focusing on player development and stuff like that instead of going out and getting big name guys,
For sure. I think it's kind of an element of patience there, right? Like you can see at the major league level, like this isn't the year. The year. So don't overspend on too many big guys. So I kind of like the approach they're taking there. It just is going to take.
Well, it's smart too. I mean, as we're going to move on to the rest of the AL East, I mean, the competition in the division is just insane. And if you're in the basement right now and you're saying like, well, we're not going to get our big prospects up for another 2 years, why do you want to go out and spend huge money to try and compete now with how much competition is in the division? It's smarter to be patient, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the New York Yankees, who finished in 4th in the AL East last year. Much more promising things happening on the horizon for the Yankees. Just go around the diamond again behind the plate. Fangraphs has Austin Wells being their opening day catcher. I really like Austin Wells, probably more than Trevino, and especially if you can kind of have that tandem of Trevino and Wells, kind of shelter Wells from lefties, Trevino's from righties. It's going to be a good tandem back there for sure. Austin Wells is a 25-year-old prospect who came up at the end of last year and showed some good flashes. So definitely some to look out for this coming year. First base, Anthony Rizzo. Hopefully the concussion is healed. He can get back to his former self. And notice how I'm saying praise about Yankees players because it's fun to see baseball players succeed, even if they are your rival. Second base, Gleyber Torres had a good year last year. Kind of the best hitter on the Yankees last year, to be honest. See if he can replicate it again this year. Shortstop, Volpe. say what you want about his rookie season. Statistic wise, wasn't great. Got some developing to do, but he has an okay glove out there. I think his second year is going to be a lot better than his first. Third base, DJ LeMahieu. He's getting old. He's getting old. I know Yankee fans kind of want him out. So we'll see how he does this year, if he can get that bat to ball back up. It just seems like he's not seeing it real well these days. In right field, newly acquired Juan Soto at age 25, his third team that he's been on. You think of like a big superstar getting traded 3 separate times. Just doesn't really happen that often. But Juan Soto is a New York Yankee. It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. As an Orioles fan, I am scared that Juan Soto is now in the AL East. Say what you want about him. Like, he's had some down years recently, but that dude is the dude. Like, top 10 player in the major leagues. Being at Yankee Stadium, his home run numbers are going to increase, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. Center field, Aaron Judge. Don't need any explanation there. And then left field, Alex Verdugo, newly acquired from Boston, as we just mentioned. This is a good lineup. Oh, and then DH is Stanton. And, yeah, we'll see how he does. He kind of stinks. This is a good lineup.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you add Juan Soto in the offseason,
yeah,
you had a good offseason. Yeah. I mean, that could have been the only thing that the Yankees did all offseason, and that's a good offseason.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not. They also acquired Marcus Stroman. That's probably the second biggest thing that they did all offseason.
Oh yeah, didn't even talk about the rotation. I mean, the rotation of Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, Nestor Cortez. It's a pretty gross rotation too.
If they're all healthy, that's the thing is. So last year, I have in our notes, it was I think the worst Yankee season in 30 years. But you also have to figure their rotation, which at the start of last season we were like, oh my god, that is a 5-headed monster.
Yeah.
Fell apart. I mean, through injuries. I mean, Rodon wasn't healthy all season. Domingo Germán had that wild abuse case turned drunken stupor in the clubhouse, and so he got suspended. And
and he threw a perfect game.
And he threw a perfect game like right before that. Like and also got thrown out for being found with sticky substances twice.
Yeah.
Just like it seems like the Yankee clubhouse last year had the perfect mixture for everyone else in the AL East to just beat up on them a little bit. I mean, they still had good games, that they were huge battles, but it was the perfect mixture that everybody else had an opportunity to surpass the Yankees, because they were so beat up injury wise, and there just seemed to be a lot of dysfunction in the clubhouse. Aaron Judge took a step back, as I think was kind of expected. There was no way he was going to do what he did the year before every year, and he got hurt. Yeah,
he was going to do what he did, and then he met the LA wall.
But I think you said it best. I do not like Juan Soto being in the AL East on a team that is not the Baltimore Orioles. That's not going to be fun as an Orioles fan to watch. Do the Yankees scare me? Yeah, a little bit, because they're the Yankees. I think they definitely do have some holes. I mean, you kind of hit on some of them there. Third base, they don't really have solid third base right now. DH as Giancarlo Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton has not been the same Giancarlo Stanton for probably a solid 4 seasons now. Yeah. And you know, Juan Soto, yeah, he struggled a little bit last year. He's still Juan Soto, but you know, Anthony Rizzo, injury prone, you know, that sort of thing. We'll see what happens with the rotation, if they're healthy this year or not. I mean, Carlos Rodon, when he was healthy last year, was not good.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an outlier thing. I don't think that's going to continue this year. Would I say that they're probably most likely to compete with the Orioles for the division as it stands? Looking at that, yes. Plain and simple is yes. Are they unbeatable? No. and I think they're very human. I think what will be interesting to see is what they do at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to is I just don't see them having a ton to trade. I know Yankee fans were all over the place when Burns got traded to the Orioles, where they were sitting there going like, "Oh, the Orioles traded with basically nobody. They got Corbin Burns. You're telling me the Yankees couldn't do that? We could have traded away guys." And what Yankee fans don't realize is the Orioles farm system is absolutely stacked, and they have more guys than they know what to do with. So trading away your 7th and 14th best prospect for the Orioles is like trading away your 3rd and 5th best prospects for the Yankees. So I just don't know that they have the depth. That's the biggest thing is if they stay healthy, they're a really scary team.
Yeah.
You get 1 or 2 injuries on that team, I don't know that they have the depth to sustain, any sort of winning streaks or things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest key for me with them is just as it stands right now, they're scary if they stay healthy.
I will say the Yankees do have a pretty deep farm system. 6 prospects in the top 100. Jason Dominguez, obviously being one of them, he will be out for the entirety of the season with Tommy John surgery. But I mean, they're deep. They certainly could have made a Burns trade happen, but it looked like the Brewers were looking for major league ready guys. Austin Wells and Dominguez were their only 2 big prospects that were really major league ready. They have a lot of like dudes in that farm system, but they're just so young. Like ETA is looking at like 25, 26.
Here's the thing I'm really worried about, honestly, as it stands right now, is we keep getting reports that they keep offering Snell a contract.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, they have
and
money.
For whatever reason, he's not signing. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's I want more money, I want more years, or if he's just like, I don't want to play in New York, which could totally be the case. Who knows?
Is Snell a Boris guy?
Scott Boris guy?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so he won't sign until like the very end. Yeah, he's a Scott Boris guy. So, I mean, he'll sign. I mean, he's got to sign soon, right? I mean, spring training started.
Clock is ticking, man.
So, frankly, I don't think that it's out of the question that Snell could sign with the Yankees. Honestly, I think it's more likely than anything, unless a random suitor comes out of the woodwork. But like the way to beat the Yankees is to really get into their weaknesses. Like the bullpen's not the same bullpen that it was last year. Even like they lost a lot of dudes. They lost guys. Like, I mean, I'm looking at who they lost right now, like relief pitcher. And they haven't quite filled those all the way back up. I mean, you still got Clay Holmes now as your closer. Loaizaga had a good year last year. Tommy Kahnle's coming back off of injury. I mean, that's a big weakness right there. And then, on days that those starters like Rodon, like Stroman, who were hurt and kind of inconsistent last year a little bit, like get on them. Like you see them on the schedule. Like, yeah, this is the one we got to win. Like you got Cole, Rodon, Schmidt in a 5. Like you should take 2 out of 3 on those.
I think the one thing the Yankees do really well is they try to keep that Bronx Bombers name alive. And that's the one thing I wish the Orioles were a little better on. Is that I hear what you're saying, where it's like get into the bullpen, and that's their weakness. You can beat them once you get into the late 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th innings, possibly, depending on what happens. I don't like the idea though of getting into a offensive battle with the Yankees, because they can, I mean, with that lineup, they can hit it with anyone in the league. Yeah. They can put up a great offensive numbers.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I wish the Orioles had done this offseason. If I'm comparing what they did to the Orioles, I think the Orioles had a great offseason. The one thing I wish the Orioles had, and I've wanted this for years with the Orioles, is the Orioles still, I feel like, don't have that one guy in the lineup that every time he comes up to bat, everyone goes, oh no, back up, and the Yankees have 2 in Aaron Judge and now Juan Soto.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part is
Absolutely.
I don't want to get into an offensive battle with the Yankees. Um, and for the Orioles, that's what sucks about Kyle Bradish and John Means going down
Yeah.
is if you had those guys, I'd feel a lot better going up against the Yankees and saying like, okay, we can outpitch them, I believe. Without those guys, you have to focus on the offense. And I just Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, I can't get over that of
Yeah.
like, I don't think we can out offense them, you know?
Yeah, it's gonna be some good battles, man. I mean, every time that the Orioles and the Yankees play this year, it's gonna be a good game. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a good game, no doubt. Moving to the team up north, the Toronto Blue Jays finished in third last year in the AL East.
Did make the playoffs.
Yeah, did make the playoffs. Not a lot has really changed in their front guys in the lineup. Behind the dish, Alejandro Kirk, who's looking to have a bounce back year after a pretty pitiful year last year. First base, Vladdy Jr., gracing the cover of MLB The Show this year. Again, looking for a bounce back year there. Kind of underwhelming last year. So we'll see if he can find it again. I have confidence that he'll find it again. Second base, Cavan Biggio. He's been around for a good amount of time. He's now 29 years old. I think him and Davis Schneider will probably platoon there in the middle infield. I like Schneider more than Biggio by a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if Schneider gets a lot more of those reps at second base. Shortstop, Bo Bichette, killer year last year, looking to replicate it again. Third base, IKF, was signed as a free agent from the Yankees. I mean, we've seen him for a while. He's been on the Yankees for a while. I think getting out of New York is going to be big for him.
He had a lot of haters in New York.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be better than he was in New York, like maybe a little bit. But just like for peace of mind for that guy, I think getting out of New York was the right call. Across the outfield, George Springer and right. He had a down year last year. See if he can rejuvenate. He's almost 35 now. Like he's getting old. Center field, got Kevin Kiermaier again. He's a glove first guy. Don't expect too much offense there. Left field, Dalton Varsho, really, really down year last year. He was that big headliner in the Gabby Moreno trade with the D-backs. They were expecting him to do a lot, both behind the dish and in the outfield, and he just didn't produce offensively. And that was just kind of the bottom line for his season. Newly acquired Justin Turner in his age 39 season will be the designated hitter for the Blue Jays, followed by Danny Jansen as a backup catcher, Daniel Vogelbach, who was just signed within the last week, Santiago Espinal and Davis Schneider on the bench. Pretty good rotation again. Cy Young contender Gausman will be returning again for his age 33 season. Jose Barrios, who found it last year, give me their number 2. Chris Bassett again. He was fine last year. I think kind of underwhelming to Blue Jays fans a little bit. So we'll see if he can have a better year this year. Yusei Kikuchi at the 4, and we'll see if Alek Manoah stays in that 5 spot. But honestly, don't really see him staying there after the conversation we had before we started recording. And then Jordan Romano headlining the bullpen as their closer, followed by the same slew of guys that we saw last year. This team really isn't any different than last year. It's just a matter of how they perform. They have a couple guys in the farm waiting. Ricky Tiedemann's their top prospect, 28th overall in the league, a high-powered lefty arm. I really like him a lot. I wish so bad that he was an Oriole, dude. He's so fun to watch pitch, sitting at around 100 with just killer off-speed stuff. That's really all they have in the farm system that could be up this year. But yeah, like I said, it's just a matter if they show up to the ballpark for 162 or not.
I think too. So you highlighted Alek Manoah and the question marks surrounding him. So for folks that don't remember, Alek Manoah kind of imploded last year, and like so much so that they sent him to the Florida Complex League, which isn't even organized ball at that point. That's just like that's literally like high schoolers
It's
playing at
instruction.
that point. Yeah. And he never showed up. He never showed up to the Florida Complex League. And then today was his first start in spring training since that happened, and did not go well. Inning and 2/3, gave up 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 hit batters. Just overall not a good outing. So as it stands right now, it seems like Alek Manoah is picking up exactly where he left off last year. And when you go the year before, where he was in Cy Young contention and made the All-Star game, and everyone was like, "Oh, this guy's the ace," he's right up there with Gausman and all this stuff. That's suddenly a giant hole you have to fill. And then on top of that, they lost Hyunjin Ryu, who went back to the Korean League. That's a big loss for them as well. They had a few pickups. Justin Turner's a great veteran presence and everything like that. But overall, I mean, like you said, it's mostly the same team, just 1 or 2 different faces. I would say, just looking at that, I'd say the Blue Jays regress a little bit.
Yeah.
I would project the Blue Jays end up 4th in the division. And
Yeah.
that's partially that you're playing the toughest division in baseball. Like I said, everyone got an opportunity because the Yankees regressed so bad last year. You're probably not going to have that opportunity this year. And so I just don't see the Blue Jays being better than where they were last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if all these teams in the AL East kind of hit their ceiling, which is very possible, right? Like, I wouldn't expect the Blue Jays to be the same team that they were last year. I would expect a few more wins. Like, this could be the year that there's 4 AL East teams in the playoffs.
It always looks like that in like June and July, and then usually by like end of July and
Yeah.
August, like someone falls off. But I mean, like you're right. Like if everything hits, like it's very easily conceivable that the all the wild card teams are all AL East teams.
Yes, I mean, like, giving my whole like AL East prediction, like it's gonna be a whole dogfight. Like it's gonna be kind of crazy. Like September could be nuts. So I got the Red Sox being last, and then I got the Blue Jays in 4th. I think, I don't even know, and then like the Rays in 3rd, and then the Yankees in 2nd.
Well, let's talk about those Rays then. Let's talk about the next
Yeah.
guys you got after the Blue Jays.
So the Rays, like, again, it's a pretty similar team from last year. Behind the plate, Rene Pinto. They lost Betancourt to free agency last year. So Pinto is going to be their starting backstop. Not really what you want there, but he's probably a defense first guy, and that's how the Rays have always operated behind the plate. Yandy Diaz at first with a huge season last year, looking to replicate. Brandon Lau, who was hurt most of last year, is going to be playing second base. Jose Caballero is going to be playing short. Excuse me on the name. They just acquired him from the Mariners.
Why'd they have to get a new shortstop, huh?
Yeah, so yeah, he's a really not young, but he has not much major league service time. So we'll see how he performs. Isaac Paredes will be at third base again. Had a good year last year. Again, seeing if they can replicate that. In right field, Josh Lowe, kind of a low-powered year last year, but he will probably be platooned with Harold Ramirez and Johnny DeLuca, who will be on the bench to start. In center field, Jose Siri, glove first guy for sure. He's got a little bit of pop in the plate, just got to unlock it. Left field, Randy Arozarena doesn't really need an explanation. And then Jonathan Aranda, who came up at the end of the year last year, was very, very high on a lot of prospect rankings. Exciting to see what he's going to do in a full season. I would expect some high-powered power numbers. That's kind of been his calling card. Left-handed power bat, lots of homers, lots of RBIs. It'll be fun to watch. Starting 5 rotation, Zach Eflin, who had a good year last year. He seemed to always be pitching against the Orioles. Um, followed
That's
by
always
Aaron.
their luck, man. Always the Orioles' luck to go up against the number one guy in everyone's rotation, man.
Yeah. Followed by Aaron Savali in the 2 spot, traded from Cleveland last year. He was having a good year last year and then kind of wasn't great on the Rays down the stretch. See if he can get back to form. Zach Littell is going to be their 3 starter, claimed off of waivers from the Red Sox in May of last year. I honestly cannot remember this guy pitching for the Rays last year, even a little bit. Ryan Pepio is going to be their 4th guy. He was just acquired from the Dodgers in that Glasnow trade. Taj Bradley, their 5 starter. I like Bradley a lot. Really young guy. Kind of got knocked around a little bit last year. But, it's really tough when you come up and down so many times like he did to really find your role on a major league club. In the bullpen, again, I could read all these names, but you're not going to know them. The same Rays pitching lab guys, headlined by Pete Fairbanks, Jason Adam, Colin Poche, all the same guys. I think the biggest thing for the Rays this year is that how many starting pitchers that they have injured. Their 3 top guys, Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, and Jeffrey Springs, all had some sort of surgery pertaining to their arm. McClanahan's going to miss pretty much all year. Rasmussen might try and come back this year. It's going to be close. He had TJ or elbow surgery on his internal brace last July. And then Springs had TJ in April of last year. So it's all 50-50 whether they're going to be able to pitch this year or not. If that rotation was at full strength, I think that the Rays would have a very legitimate chance of winning the division because those 5 guys like Eflin, Savali, McClanahan, Rasmussen, and Springs would be disgusting. Would be absolutely gross, but they don't have that. Thank goodness. But yeah, it's the same Rays team as last year, pretty much. They lost a couple relievers, not really a big part of their plan last year. So we'll see.
And their shortstop.
We'll see.
They lost their shortstop.
Yeah, they lost their shortstop. Yeah.
He's in jail in the Dominican Republic right now. They lost their shortstop.
Yeah, so I expect the Rays to finish in 3rd. They have some reinforcements down in the farm. Curtis Mead, wouldn't be surprised to see him come up at some point this year. He's been in their system a long time. Junior Caminero also came up at the end of last year a little bit. So, you could see some of those younger guys come up and make a difference. But honestly, I see some regression for the Tampa Bay Rays. Even if it's just by a few games, those games are going to matter down the stretch.
It was a weird offseason for the Rays because that Tyler Glasnow trade to me was such a weird trade. When I saw it, I was really surprised. I didn't think there was any chance in the world that the Rays were going to trade Glasnow. Reading up on the trade, a lot of people said like, "Oh, it was an even trade on both sides." The Rays got a pretty good return, all that stuff. I don't know, man. Like Glasnow is a stud, and it was weird that you had a 99 win season. You just barely missed out winning your division. You started off the season last year with a 13-game win streak. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is the best team in baseball," and then they regressed a little bit. Orioles were able to catch them, that sort of thing. But it seemed like there was a lot to build off of there, and then you took a stud like Glasnow and you traded him away.
Well, they weren't going to pay him. Going to pay him, and I think that was the way that they could get something from him other than that comp round pick. And
which makes sense. Yeah.
Glasnow got a lot of money, and that's just not what the Rays do. They don't sign guys like that.
No, and I'll say this, like that it was a weird move to me. I get the logic of like, look, we're not going to end up paying you. You're not going to end up staying here, so we got to get some sort of return for you. That's exactly what the Brewers did with Corbin Burns and the Orioles, right? The thing is, like they had a lot of holes that they had to fill. I don't know necessarily that they filled them all well. But here's the thing is like, I don't think you can ever count them out because the Rays farm system, it's weird to me that the Rays farm system always feels like it's undervalued when you look at prospect rankings and farm system rankings, because it seems like every time they lose someone, someone else comes up and fills their place. Like, it just seems like they're constantly rolling out guys.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I want to sit there and be like, yeah, the Rays are going to regress. But then I know, like, they're going to suddenly have some random guy that none of us have heard about, like, come up and make his MLB debut and be in the front runner for being rookie of the year or something. Like, it's gonna, like, something like that's gonna happen. Just looking at it though, as it stands now, like what you just read off to me, I think they're still gonna be good. But I think just the Yankees and the Orioles are better teams. And so, yeah, I agree. I think I've got them third place as well, but I think they still make the playoffs easily. I think the Blue Jays are a bigger question as to whether or not they get that last wild card spot, but I think it's very easy that bare minimum 3 teams from the AL East are going to be going to the playoffs, and very easily I think that's the Orioles, Yankees, and the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get back into the birds.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Orioles, I think you and I both just said it right now. We're still expecting them to win the division. I think it is going to be a dogfight. And in order for that dogfight to happen, we are now in the midst of spring training, and there are roster spot battles going on right now. That's the biggest thing out of Orioles spring training right now is we have a lot of not necessarily holes to fill, but we have a lot of guys competing for those starting positions. So we're just going to highlight some of the key battles to look for during these spring training games, which, by the way, Jack, have you been able to catch any spring training games on TV?
I watched the first inning of. I watched Corbin Burns pitch, and that's it.
All right, that's worth it right there. Yeah, I've watched it a little bit. I'm glad. I feel like this year, with our Orioles membership, that they renewed our MLB TV accounts a little bit earlier than they did last year, so I'm able to catch a little bit more spring training. So the first battle that I have here to highlight is one that we talked about last week. And that is the starting rotation. And it's weird because, if you had asked us 2 weeks ago, there was no rotation battle. You were going to have Burns, Bradish, Rodriguez, Means, Kramer. And maybe you would have a battle for that 5th spot, someone trying to compete with Kramer for the 5th spot. But honestly, like there was no battle. And then Bradish and Means went down. So at least for the first couple months of the season, you're going to have a battle to see who's going to be in the starting rotation. Who's that going to be? Well, we have to look at who were starters last year first, and Tyler Wells is obviously one of those names that you have to throw out there. At the beginning of the season, he was an absolute stud. Really looked really, really good. A lot of people were talking about like, oh man, he's going to be a rotation piece for a long time. And then just middle of the season, he just started to fall off. Don't think he was used to the workhorse mentality of having to carry so many innings. He was used to being reliever for a lot of his career, and he had to go down to Double-A to the Orioles pitch lab. Came back at the end of the season, pitched really well out of the bullpen, but he'll be competing probably for one of those rotation spots. Then you have Cole Irvin, picked up by the Orioles last year, was in the starting rotation to start off. He had an earlier drop off than Tyler Wells did. Probably, I think it was May. He kind of dropped off. They sent him down to AAA, retrained him to be a bullpen guy. Came back up. Was the long reliever for the Orioles, where he was a decent long reliever. I will say, interestingly enough, I think it was yesterday. He pitched in his first spring training game of the year, and it was pointed out that on every single one of his pitches, he was having 3 miles per hour of velocity more than what he had last year. So that Orioles pitching lab might have been hard at work, and we might see a Cole Irvin resurgence.
I think Cole Irvin's going to be the 4. And this is what Elias saw when he traded for him 2 years ago. I think that's what he saw, that there was something there to be unlocked, and they finally unlocked it this year. He had a great offseason, it sounds like, just like looking at results. I mean, it was a firm 95 too. Had a little bit of run on it. A firm 95 from the left side. on the heater, and then all the off-speed pitches just looked real sharp from that clip that I saw. So I think Irvin, honestly, going to be that 4. If he can keep this up, and it proves to be effective, he's going to be a good 4 option. He's going to be a good back end option.
So that's one thing I wanted to ask you is someone like Irvin struggled a little bit last year, comes in his first spring training game and suddenly the velocity is up by 3 miles an hour. And like, that doesn't sound like a lot if you just say like, oh, 3 miles an hour. Okay.
Yeah.
But in the grand schemes of pitchers, if you're looking at someone that normally pitches a 92 mile per hour fastball who's suddenly pitching a 95 mile per hour fastball, that's a huge difference.
That's a big
That
difference.
is a huge difference.
That's
so you're coaching collegiate level. I know you might not be a pitching coach, but like, what does that mean? Like, what did he do in the offseason to suddenly pick up more velocity? Because it can't just be weight room training, right? Like, there's got to be more to it.
Yeah, I mean, weight room training is a big part of it. And honestly, like finding a routine that works for a guy is also huge. Like finding that throwing routine, finding that thing that makes you tick before every game, that can also help a lot. And then of course, like just going through a lot of different instructional things with coaches. I don't know if he did a Driveline-esque thing in the off season. Honestly, that just wasn't a report I was looking for. But I mean, the difference between 92 and 95, like you said, is vast. Like 92, you can still see seams on the ball. Like it's going to get on you, but you can like, it's not a problem, especially for professional guys to hit 92. But 95, like you start to stop seeing seams. That thing really starts getting on you. And it can be the difference between somebody rolling over a ground, like on a heater on the outside quarter, or taking that thing 350 the other way. Like that can be a big difference.
Well, I'll say this too with Cole Irvin. I really like Cole Irvin's personality. I think he's a really good bench guy, like just to have in the clubhouse. Like I think he's a really good guy to have around. So if we're going to see a Cole Irvin resurgence, I am here for it. I will root for him the entire way because I would be really, really excited for that.
Absolutely.
I have one more name in here, Jack, that anytime you throw this name in there, you kind of shudder like, uh-oh, are we in trouble? We might be in trouble. Bruce Zimmerman, still on the Orioles, still spent most of last year in AAA, had a couple spot starts. Hasn't had a consistent MLB role since early 2022, where he had a really good start to the season and then kind of dropped off. Is it possible that Mike Elias says, hey, I don't want Wells to get used to being a starter and then I put him in the pen, or I don't want Irvin to be used to being a starter and I put him in pen. So who can I bring out here, start the first month of games, and then when John Means comes back, I send him back down to AAA? Bruce Zimmerman's that guy. Do you think it's possible that that's the route that Mike Elias goes? And if he does, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it is very possible, especially because none of the other starting pitchers are really like that we have in the system. Like especially the younger guys, like the prospects, they're not really ready yet. Cade Povich is really close, but I think he probably needs to start in triple for the year.
He only got to triple at the end of last year, didn't he? Like he didn't spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, so I think that Elias and the Orioles could use Zimmerman almost as like a pseudo opener, like let him go 3-4 innings depending on how his outing's going, and then give it to a guy like Wells in the 5th inning who's proven
kind of like an Austin Voth from 2 years.
Yeah, I think that Tyler Wells is a much better version of Austin Voth.
Well, I'm saying Zimmerman's Austin Voth from 2 years ago.
Oh, yes. But I mean, Wells has proven that he can give you 3 or 4 innings out of the bullpen of high quality baseball, like 1-run, 2-run type of deal. So I don't think that if Zimmerman can prove that he can give us 3-4 innings of 1-run baseball, that it's not really a horrible option. Obviously it's not the option that you want to have in August or July. Like you're hoping that Bradish and Means can come back and round out the rest of the rotation. But for the time being, I don't think it's a horrible option. And I say that very cautiously.
A cold April night's a lot better than a warm July afternoon.
Absolutely.
For a guy like Zimmerman. I think that's where he has a lot of troubles is when once the weather started warming up and the ball
Yeah.
started flying more, that's where Zimmerman doesn't have a lot of help.
Yeah. And I mean, and you build up in spring training, you get to the June, Julys, and sometimes for guys that really aren't stretched out and don't have that experience of going a full 162, your arm can just get tired on you. I mean, we saw that happen with Wells midseason last year. Really proved that he probably is going to be a reliever. Zimmerman's been a starter his whole career. Give him a shot, maybe. See how it goes for April and May.
Of course, there's always the option that the Orioles get a free agency, go into the free agency. There's still a lot of free agent pitchers left. There's also possible they could make another trade. They've certainly got the pieces to make a trade. We'll see. We'll see. They've got options.
Yeah.
Next is one that I think will be really interesting, and that's the outfield battle. So obviously, you have the core three guys in the outfield. You have Cedric Mullins, Austin Hayes, and Anthony Santander. Interestingly enough, we'll follow this story as the season goes on. Both Austin Hayes and today Anthony Santander have come out and said that they would really love to have extensions from the Orioles. Orioles haven't been in the business of giving out long contract extensions to really anyone, but new ownership, who knows? Maybe someone will want to sign one of those guys or both. We'll see. But those are your core three guys. We also had the news that Brandon Hyde is looking at platooning both Jorge Mateo and Ryan O'Hearn in the outfield a little bit. I'm okay with Mateo doing a little bit of outfield on one condition, and that is that his role is one thing and one thing only, and that is he comes in the late innings as a pinch runner. He runs around the bags, gets us an extra run or something, and then you throw him in the outfield or wherever to finish out the game.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him in the outfield for a full 9 innings. Give it 8th inning pinch runner, comes in the 9th inning, fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But anything more than that, not so much. Ryan O'Hearn is more of a, hey, we'd really like to have O'Hearn and Mountcastle in the lineup for this game. We need somewhere to put O'Hearn because Adley's already DHing. Let's put him in right field. We saw that a little bit last year. Might see it a little bit more this year. We'll see how that goes. But the big thing is, who is going to be the true fourth outfielder? Who is going to be that fourth outfielder that's on the bench and is filling in more regularly? The way I see it, Jack, is we got the two names that are competing for it right now. That would be Heston Kjerstad, came up last year at the end of the season, got a lot of pure power. He is the MLB overall 32 prospect. And Colton Cowser made his MLB debut last year, came up for a little bit, then went back down, didn't quite have the success that people were hoping that he was going to have. But he is still ranked higher than Heston Kjerstad. He is ranked as the 19th overall prospect in baseball. I will point out, in the first game of spring training, hit a walk-off 2-run home run. What do you think about the battle between Kjerstad and Cowser?
I mean, it's tough because you got to remember that, like, somebody's going to DH sometimes. And O'Hearn proved that he was a good DH. I think that the fourth outfielder is going to be Mateo. Just off his speed and defense alone, and you can kind of stick him at the bottom of the order if he does need to play a full 9. But like you said, he's going to be a defensive replacement most likely in the later parts, and it's possible that Kjerstad will be the backup first baseman. But you're kind of running out of roster spots here. Like, somebody's going to have to stay down. If I had it my way, Cowser's the fourth outfielder, Kjerstad's the backup first baseman, and then
where do you put Ryan O'Hearn?
God, there's just so many. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing it's I don't see it that way. I think O'Hearn is the backup first baseman. I don't think they're really trying Kjerstad at first base a lot. Like, yeah. I've only ever seen him put in the outfield. Everyone keeps talking about that, like, move Kjerstad to first base. I don't think he's done that a whole lot in the minors or in spring training. So I don't think that's the plan. I will say he's gotten off to a slower spring training than he got off to last year. Last year he had a wild spring training.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I put in here that there's 2 other wild cards that could really throw off this battle of Kjerstad or Cowser. Kyle Stowers is having a really good spring training. Obviously, he had a really bad start to the year last year, and then it came out that he had been dealing with a shoulder injury, and he's really spent most of last year injured. But he was a big guy that came up in 2022, kind of helped put a little spark in the Orioles. Bats a little bit in 2022. There was a big hope that he was going to continue that success and didn't, in part because of the injury. But he's off to a really hot start in spring training as well. Mike Elias said back in, I think, November or December, whenever the winter meetings were, he had said that Kyle Stowers is going to be a little under the radar big piece for the Orioles in 2024. So I could see Mike Elias saying, hey, a healthy Kyle Stowers, I want him on the major league roster. And then, of course, there's the one guy that's going to make us all suddenly throw our computers in disgust, Ryan McKenna. Elias and Hyde love Ryan McKenna. Who's not to say Ryan McKenna doesn't get that 4th outfield spot?
Yeah, I think ultimately this thing is going to result in the young prospects going to be starting in triple, and seeing what the older guys do. Like if they can prove that they are major leaguers and can stay around for a while, they'll keep running them. If not, I think May, June, they kind of make a shift, start calling guys back up, and see. It's just so tough because the Orioles are so deep that like you forget that you only got 4 bench spots.
And then there's one final battle that we're going to focus on. We could go into bullpen, but the bullpen is so many players, and you're looking at options and left, right, and all that stuff. We're not going to get into the bullpen today, but this is the one everyone's talking about. And when I say everyone's talking about it, I'm not saying everyone in Baltimore is talking about it. I'm talking about everyone in the major leagues are talking about this. And this is the major question is, does Jackson Holliday break camp? They are trying him out at second base almost exclusively for spring training. That would be the place because, we lost Adam Frazier. We had Rougned Odor the year before. That's the place that the Orioles haven't really had a consistent piece in for a couple years now as we've been going through this rebuild. So, if you're going to put Jackson Holliday somewhere where you need a hole filled that he could, potentially fill with his skill set as being a left side of the infield player, second base makes the most sense for Jackson Holliday. He is the number 1 overall prospect in all of baseball. You could, I don't know about you, Jack, but I really like the idea of having a left side of the infield of Westburg, Gunnar, and Holliday. I think that's a crazy good left side of the infield. But hold on 1 second, because there's a guy named Kobe Mayo who could also potentially beat out Jackson Holliday. So I think that will be an interesting battle to watch because Kobe Mayo is having a really, really good spring.
Yeah, Mayo is doing a really good job so far. Had another pair of hits today in the spring training game. Honestly, like Fangraphs thinks that Jackson Holliday is going to break camp. And I don't think that that's an outlandish take. That would be so cool, isn't it?
It would be cool. It's weird because like logically, it's like he's too young. He cannot possibly break camp. But also, nothing that Jackson Holliday has done thus far has been logical. So like, it's like, why could he not? Honestly, it's weird with Jackson Holliday. I was thinking about this, like just mentality wise, as an Orioles fan. Like when Adley Rutschman was coming up and he was the number 1 overall prospect in baseball, it was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Like this is going to be the guy that the Orioles build their team around. Like that's awesome. And then he came up and he graduated, and then suddenly next thing you know, Gunnar Henderson was the number 1 overall prospect in baseball, and you're like, oh, well, that's a bonus. Like, all right, awesome. Like this is really going to help shore up our team. And then Jackson Holliday gets drafted, and suddenly he's propelled into the number 1 prospect in all of baseball spot. And it's weird, Jack. Like I almost feel like the stardom around Jackson Holliday, because MLB didn't talk about Adley Rutschman nearly as much as they're talking about Jackson Holliday.
Certainly,
they didn't talk about Gunnar Henderson nearly as much as they're talking about Jackson Holliday. Everyone around Major League Baseball is talking about Jackson Holliday.
Absolutely.
And it's just like this weird thing. I'm like, is he in the right place? Like, is he supposed to be in Baltimore? Because this is a lot of bright lights surrounding this 20-year-old kid, and he's going to be playing for the Baltimore Orioles. Are we sure about that?
Absolutely. This feels like, and stop me if you think I'm wrong, but this kind of feels like Ken Griffey Jr.-esque. Like,
it's totally Ken Griffey Jr.-esque. It's definitely like the kid, It's I almost feel like imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't deserve him. We don't deserve Jackson Holiday.
That's how it felt when we got Burns.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Like I just feel like he should be on the Yankees or the Dodgers or something. Like, and he's gonna be playing in Baltimore. Yeah. And that's so crazy exciting. I am begging Mike Elias to please let Jackson Holiday break camp, because I will be so excited for it.
Yeah.
I can also see him and Hyde pulling that rug out from under us and being like, we think he needs more time at AAA. And then he's going to come out in the first month and like just blow everything out of the water in AAA. And then they're going to go, okay, now he can come up.
But on it, like, even if he does start in triple, like, it would be beyond fair, because at the end of last year, and again, this was before his like training, before all those crazy videos in the offseason came out, like he seemed a little bit like he found something that kind of, he met his match in a way. So I wouldn't be overly shocked if he didn't break camp, but I, again, wouldn't be shocked if he did break camp.
It's going to be fun to see. I think Kobe Mayo is probably the biggest challenge to him. It's always possible we could get really disappointed and suddenly Tyler Nevin is starting at second base or something like that. I think
he can't. He genuinely can't.
You never know, man. You never know what's going through Elias's mind.
He has to be organizational depth and nothing else.
Yeah.
We're too loaded to let guys like Tyler Nevin take reps away from a Kobe Mayo, from a
Jackson Holiday. But I could see it happening. That's the sad thing, is I could see it happening. That's the biggest. I mean, that's the national storyline that's coming out of the Orioles baseball, is will Jackson Holiday break camp? I think the odds are good, but you just never know. I'm excited to see it. We're going to keep following it as we go along. It's spring training. There's going to be more stuff happening. I think within the next week or so, we're going to see a lot more of those free agents sign. We'll be right here covering all of that. Jack, do you have any parting words of wisdom for the crowd before we head out?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to all the programming that we have coming up within the next month. We're looking to get some interviews, kind of change it up a little bit from last year, get some other opinions, some other minds to talk about the Orioles and baseball in general. So other than that, spring training is moving quickly, and anything could happen within a week. So this time next Tuesday, we could be talking about something absolutely nuts, good or bad. So make sure you're continuing to tune in, so you don't miss anything.
And with that, we'll see you all next week. Let's go O's.
Thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to UPod Street, an Orioles podcast by fans for fans. UPod Street is an official Birdland Sports affiliate. Directly support the pod by purchasing UPod Street or other Orioles merchandise using the link birdlandsports.com/UPod Street. Get 10% off your order when you use the code UPod Street. Follow us on Twitter @UPod Street and @JackBain20. UPod Street is also on Facebook and YouTube, and you can listen to the show on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. On whatever platform you listen, please subscribe, rate the pod, and leave a review. If you leave a review, we may even read it on the show. We'll see you next week, and of course, let's go O's.